I'm John Batchelor. Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes, is here with me, and we're going to Gordon Chang of Forbes.com because there is a mystery, and it needs to be solved. Gordon, a very good evening to you. The mystery goes like this. We have the arrests of Zhou Yongkang, the former security boss, the KGB head of the Chinese Communist Party in the previous government, arrested, purged from the party, arrested. We have Sony Pictures hacked by North Koreans, we are told, but we can also believe that North Korea doesn't do anything in cyber terror without the Chinese. We have an article that you put up in Forbes.com about the Chinese economy being so troubled that they're losing money in casinos. And we have a new article brought to us from Bloomberg that the Chinese are looking to put nuclear missiles in their submarines. 4 different expressions of disorder or turmoil or incomprehension from my point of view. Where's this going, Gordon? What is behind it? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John, and good evening, Thaddeus. Right now, China is in a very interesting position where you have the economy really in distress. That is causing political problems right now. Xi Jinping, the ruler, has purged Zhou Yongkang, as you pointed out. He's been booted out of the Communist Party, and his case has been referred to prosecutors, which means there will be a trial. Also, at the same time, there are other elements of political distress. There are more and more rumors that the premier of China, Chang, is not going to get a second term at the 19th Party Congress 3 years from now. And basically the idea is that he's being blamed for the slowdown in China. And clearly that's a sign that the economy is actually worse than people say. So right now, this is a fascinating period where China is seemingly going off the rails. Now, there's a split in opinion among China watchers. Some saying, they'll be able to stumble through it. Other people say, no, the whole place is going to fall apart. This is just like the United States in 2007 when people were debating whether there was going to be an economic crash. And clearly, I think right now, we are starting to see the first signs of failure of the Chinese state.
Thaddeus?
Gordon, John casually mentioned it, but how is the communist Chinese regime crapping out in Vegas? How do you lose money on casinos?
What's happening is, first of all, casinos in Las Vegas are starting to show serious declines in revenue, and the ones in Macau are in actual real trouble. And the reason is that Chinese gamblers are not traveling to Vegas, and they're not going to Macau. And part of the reason is there's a lot of explanations that people are giving, but the real reason, I think, is that the Chinese economy is in trouble, and gamblers can no longer use property as collateral, because property was essentially the main collateral for gambling loans. And so now you have a downturn in Las Vegas, 6 months straight of revenue declines. They're probably going to be, for the first time ever, Macau will have a decline in revenue in 2014 as opposed to the previous year. This is really interesting because Macau, came from nowhere to be almost 7 times the size of the Las Vegas Strip. This is just incredible. And the reason is because of China's economic rise, and now the reason for the failure is because of problems in the Chinese economy.
Zhou Yongkang, let's focus on the fact that they've arrested the bully itself. This is a break with the promise, you've taught me, Gordon, that was made to the Chinese Communist Party. No more purges, no more the winners take everything when the government turns over. Does this mean that with that pledge broken, there'll be factions now that have to fight for their lives?
I actually think so. The general narrative is that Xi Jinping quickly consolidated control after he became General Party Secretary in November 2012. And this is what President Obama essentially said a week ago to the Business Roundtable. I've talked about how there are factions in the Communist Party and they're slugging it out. And I think that, the arrest of Zhou Yongkang says 2 things. First of all, it does say that Xi Jinping has made some advances in being able to purge his enemies. But it also means now that because Xi Jinping has broken that rule about not prosecuting former members of the Politburo Standing Committee, that there's going to be open warfare among senior party leaders. And so I think that we are going to see even more obviously these signs of distress in the Communist Party.
Thaddeus?
So, Gordon, let me get this straight. The ultimate sin is not to use you can use the police powers of the state against the people, but not against the party members.
Right. Deng Xiaoping, after all of the purges of Mao Zedong, the first leader in China, Deng Xiaoping, his successor, basically said Politburo Standing Committee members can't be investigated, and neither can former ones. And the reason for it was to reduce the temperature at the top of the Communist Party so people wouldn't have the incentive to fight for their lives, figuratively and literally. And that basically ushered in 2 or 3 decades of political calm, or relative political calm. Now Xi Jinping is going back to the Maoist era of really doing in your enemies, and that means, as John intimated, that people will now have the incentive to fight again tooth and nail. And I think that this is eventually going to rip the Communist Party apart, because he's increased the cost of losing political struggles. Deng Xiaoping's basic genius was to say, okay, if you lose, you can go away quietly. And that really restored order to China. Now, Xi Jinping is going back the other way to Maoist times.
Gordon Chang of Forbes.com, Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes, and author most recently of Liberty Risen, The Ultimate Triumph of Libertarian Republicans. I'm John Batchelor.